Today I'm going to address a video that I came across by Frank Turek called 4 Reasons Why Christianity is True. And this came up on my feed from the Cross-Examined YouTube channel that is run by Frank Turek. And if you don't know who Frank Turek is, lucky you. But if you are deconstructing, if you are in the circle of people who have left Christianity or are talking about Christianity versus atheism, you have probably heard of Frank Turek. According to his wiki page, Frank Turek is an American apologist, author, speaker, and radio host. He is best known as the founder and president of Christian apologetics ministry, crossexamined.org. Turek co-authored 2 books, Legislating Morality and I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. In addition, Turek has authored 2 of his own books, Correct, Not Politically Correct, and Stealing from God. So I don't recall ever really listening to Turek when I was a Christian. I was more into the Piper Washer crowd when I was kind of really deep in the sauce. But now that I'm out of it and I've had a lot of these conversations with Christians as an atheist, Turek gets brought up a lot. People are always commenting and recommending that I go watch Frank Turek as if I have not already. And so when this came up, when Frank promised to give me 4 reasons that Christianity was true, I could not turn down the opportunity to, perhaps be proven wrong. Maybe I'm wrong about what I think about Christianity, and maybe there are 4 simple reasons why Christianity is true. So today, let's watch the video together and let's see if it's convincing. Before we get started, I just want to kind of put it out there what a non sequitur is, because I think it will come in handy as we're listening to this. A non sequitur is a conclusion or statement that does not logically follow from the previous argument or statement. So I think it's important that we keep that in mind as we listen to what Frank has to say. So let's jump into it. Let's hear these 4 reasons why Christianity is true.
The reason that we believe Christianity is true is because the answer to 4 questions is yes. How about the first question? Does truth exist? Obviously, you hear people say all the time, there is no truth, or you got your truth, I got my truth, all truth is relative. When somebody says there is no truth, you ought to ask that person a question. You ought to say, is that true? Is it true that there's no truth? Because if it's true that there's no truth, the claim there is no truth can't be true, but it claims to be true.
How many people are really out there making a serious argument that no truth exists? I don't hear too many people making that argument. I think this is such a simplification of, what a lot of people are telling him. I think this is a straw man, which we probably should have defined that up front too. A straw man argument is when you kind of build up an argument that someone isn't making in order to knock it down so you can feel like you've won the argument without actually addressing the point being made. And so what Frank does here is he's like, you hear those people that say just there's no truth? There's just no truth at all. All truth is relative. Well, no, I think that most people that Frank is probably having these conversations with, atheists, people who don't believe, they probably feel as though there is a specific methodology to coming to understand what truth is, but it can be very difficult to know a lot of truths about the universe. So there are a lot of truths that we don't know. There are a lot of things that we can kind of guess or assume are true, but in a very abstract sense, it's kind of difficult to know ultimate truths, life's greatest mysteries, what is true about those questions. So I really think he's building up a straw man here when he says that people say there is no truth. I think that a lot of people think there are truths that can be relative to the person. But when it comes to talking about, whether or not God exists, I think people are more likely, in my camp, more likely to argue that the truth cannot be known rather than there is no truth.
In other words, it's a self-defeating claim. Of course there's truth. If there was no truth, an atheist couldn't be right that there was no God.
Well, look at that. We have another straw man. Atheists, generally speaking, do not believe there is no God. Atheism is not a truth claim like he is making it out to be. And I know that Mr. Turek here has been told this many times by atheists. I know that he knows that many atheists do not make this claim that there is no God. I am an atheist and I do not make the claim there is no God. Having an absence of belief in a God is not the same as saying there is no God. One is a lack of claim and the other is a claim. So again, this is a straw man. Most atheists, at least that I know, modern atheists, according to the definition used by the largest atheist organization in the United States, atheism is not a claim. It is just a lack of belief. Atheists are not claiming there is no God. So again, a straw man, and we're 40 seconds in.
So there is truth. Question number 2.
Wait, that's it. That's the first reason. This is 4 reasons Christianity is true. And the first reason is because truth exists. So remember, going back to a non sequitur, truth exists. Therefore, Christianity is true, because this video is supposed to be 4 reasons Christianity is true. So if one of the reasons Christianity is true is because truth exists, that is a non sequitur. It doesn't follow. You got a long leap to get to Christianity is true from believing that truth exists. It just doesn't follow.
Does God exist? There are several arguments for the existence of God. Let me just give you one. Even atheists today are admitting that space, matter, and time had a beginning out of nothing.
Some atheists might admit that space, matter, and time had a beginning out of nothing, but I think Frank Turek's definition of nothing is probably very different than my definition of nothing. I don't even know if I have a definition of nothing. The concept of nothing is very difficult for me to wrap my head around. And if you really think about how nothing could exist, if nothing exists, then something exists, because you can't exist if you're nothing. I don't know. That doesn't really make any sense to me. I've thought a lot about, the idea of nothing. A lot of people much smarter than me have talked and debated about the idea of nothing. And that one really still kind of gets hung up in there. So I don't know that I agree as an atheist that everything came or had a beginning from nothing. I think it's highly possible. There are, lots of possibilities, but very possible that there was something before this something. It wasn't nothing, it was something, but then it turned into this something. Maybe the universe took on a completely different form before now. Maybe it expanded and then shrunk and then expanded and then shrunk. There's lots of possibilities and ideas. But to just kind of reduce atheism down to believing that everything came from nothing or everything had a beginning from nothing is kind of silly, because atheism is just a position on the existence of God, and atheists believe all different kinds of things about how the universe started, where it came from, the purpose, the intent, what comes after, all of that. None of that is defined under atheism. Atheism is just, what do you believe about God? Do you believe God exists? No? Okay, you're an atheist. That's it. That's where it stops.
Well, think about this, friends. If space, matter, and time had a beginning out of nothing, whatever created space, matter, and time can't be made of space, matter, and time.
I don't know if that follows, but I don't know. I don't have an opinion on that. Maybe. I'll give him that. Maybe.
When you think about a spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful, personal, intelligent cause, who do you think of? God.
He really likes to make a lot of assumptions for us, doesn't he? I don't think about God in the traditional sense at all. I mean, I think it's entirely possible that there is something beyond us that is powerful and intelligent in some way or another that may have started or created all of this, but that thing doesn't look like the God that is defined by humans. That thing doesn't want to be called God, does not consider itself to be God. And if that thing doesn't consider itself to be God, then we can't call it God, because it's not God, because it's the one that makes the rules, right? So God is a man-made term. God is something that humans created and defined. But whatever is beyond us could very well not be God at all. Maybe we think we've got it figured out about what God is, or what God would be or look like or how it would manifest itself. And we could be completely wrong. So I think to limit it to, oh, well, obviously, whatever it is God. Well, God is a man-made concept. It's a construct. And I can't guarantee that whatever is outside of this universe is or wants to be called God.
Now, we don't know it's the Christian God at this point, but we know it's a theistic God, a being who's beyond the world, who created the world. The third.
Okay, so truth exists, and apparently God exists. I'll give him that. So therefore, Christianity is true? These are supposed to be reasons that Christianity is true, because truth exists and because God exists. And he's yet to prove either one of those things, really. I mean, I think he's proven the truth. I think truth does exist. I think we can all agree that there are truths that exist, as abstract or complicated as that conversation might be. But we really haven't gotten to any reasons that Christianity is specifically true. But let's keep going.
Are miracles possible? Obviously, Christianity can't be true if miracles are not possible. But the greatest miracle in the Bible has already occurred, and we have scientific evidence for it. What's that? I just mentioned it. The creation of the universe out of nothing.
Creation of the universe out of nothing. We have scientific evidence to suggest that space, time, matter had a beginning, but that is not the same thing as saying the universe was created out of nothing. Those are two very, very different claims that we'd really have to kind of flesh out. To be created means that there must be a creator, a creator, somebody who created it. I don't know that this is a creation. It might be. Maybe it is. I think it's more likely something happened and we evolved, but I don't think that this was, I don't know. It's not that I don't think, but I don't know that this was necessarily created. So to claim that there's scientific proof of that is just so far from the truth. And if truth exists, that is not a truth that exists. And then on top of that, to call it a miracle, I mean, a miracle suggests something supernatural. But if we're just talking about the beginning of space, matter, time, that's natural. So I don't know how that could be a miracle.
If Genesis 1:1 is true, every other verse in the Bible is at least possible.
If Genesis 1:1 is true, then it's possible that everything else in the Bible is true. That's what we're going with. That's how we're determining that, like, that's how we're concluding truth about the Bible. Notice how Christianity loves to hinge on what is possible. They don't really work within what is reality, what is actual. They like to reside in that realm of possibility, because if they can get you to think, oh, well, it's possible, well, then they might be able to get you, coming around to their side of things. They can get you thinking like they do. But something being possible doesn't make it actual. It doesn't make it true. So it doesn't follow, again, a non sequitur, that if Genesis 1:1 is true, then the Bible is true, because he's not even making that claim. It's such a pointless point to make. Okay, all right.
Because if there's a being that can create the universe out of nothing, can he do whatever he wants inside the universe? If he can create the whole show out of nothing, of course. He can resurrect Jesus from the dead, or walk on water, or part the Red Sea. He can do any of that. Again,
we're living in possibilities here. These are not absolutes. This is not objective truth that he's presenting. He's saying if. Notice how much he says if. If this is true, then maybe this could happen. Therefore, Christianity is true? We haven't gotten there yet.
So the final question, the fourth question, which gets us all the way to the Christian God, is the New Testament reliable enough to show us that Jesus rose from the dead?
No. That's my answer, no. So I guess Christianity is not true, because he said that the answer to these four questions has to be yes for Christianity to be true. And no, I don't think it is. But you know what? We've got, we're at 2:07. This video is 3 minutes and 44 seconds. So we have like a minute and a half to be convinced. So maybe Mr. Turek here will give me some information about the New Testament that I just didn't realize before. And I can find it to be reliable. Let's see.
The reason we believe in Christianity is because an event occurred, the resurrection. Now, I have to ask you this. Why would the Jewish writers of the New Testament, all were Jewish with the exception of Luke, why would they invent a resurrected Jesus? Why would they say that a man who claimed to be God rose from the dead if it didn't happen? They thought that would be blasphemy for a man to claim to be God. And why would they invent a resurrected Jesus? They already thought they were God's chosen people. They had no motive to invent a resurrected Jesus.
I don't know that they didn't have any motive. I think it depends on which angle you view Christianity from. I think something happened and people believed it. And then they told other people, and other people believed it. And then the news got around, it spread, it was told over and over again like a game of telephone. And then decades later, people wrote it down and then they embellished the stories. I mean, to me, that's the most plausible. Without reaching, what can we reasonably conclude? Well, something happened. Something. People believed something and they talked about it. Does that mean Jesus rose from the dead? No. It could mean that a few people had a vision that they thought they saw Jesus, much like modern day people think they see Mary, or people think that they see a loved one that passed away. It happens all of the time. People have bereavement visions. They think that they see someone after they died. They're in grief. Their mental state is kind of all over the place. They're not thinking clearly. They might have a dream. They might have a vision. They might think that they experience a risen Jesus in some capacity. And then they tell someone else. And someone else is like, oh, I had that vision too. I also had that dream. I also had a dream about Jesus. He visited me too. Wow, I can't believe this happened. Let's go tell everybody else. And then other people start saying, well, I had this too. Now they're all grieving people. They're all people who are grieving and not in, a great headspace because they just lost their Messiah. I don't think that these Jews were necessarily inventing it. I think they were just part of an apocalyptic cult. They got really caught up in something and they were led to believe a lot of things that weren't true. It happens all the time. People get caught up in cults all the time. And they're led to believe things in those cults that are true. And then they do things that we consider just outrageous. Why would you do that if you didn't actually believe in it? They pass around some Kool-Aid and drink it. Or they strap a bomb to their chest and they fly a plane into a building. They do it because they believe it, not because it's true. You can believe something with all your heart that isn't true. And you can get other people to believe that thing, even if it's not true. I think something happened. I think some people thought they saw something. Maybe. It is possible it was made up. And there are a lot of reasons for that. But I think the simplest kind of thing we could conclude is there were some visions. Some people thought they saw some stuff. They came to believe it. They told it to other people. Those people came to believe it. They talked about it for a long time, many, many years before someone eventually wrote it down. And we don't even know who wrote the Gospels. We don't. We know that there are names that the church attributes to the Gospels, but all of the Gospels were anonymous. We have no idea who actually wrote the original Gospels. And I'm willing to bet it wasn't Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. I'm willing to bet it wasn't direct disciples of Jesus, but it was people who, it's like a great grandchild or something, or not, maybe not that many greats, but you know what I'm saying? It's somebody down the line that has been told a story and writes it down. It doesn't make it believable. And it doesn't mean all of the events actually happened. And you don't have to have a real risen Jesus for people to believe that they saw a risen Jesus enough to create a religion out of it.
And certainly they could not have invented it in Jerusalem, where an empty tomb existed.
We do not know that an empty tomb existed. That is not something that has been proven. It is a claim made in the Gospels, but there are lots of claims made in the Gospels that I don't believe. there was this man named Joseph of Arimathea who was apparently some kind of a secret follower of Jesus. And after Jesus died, he went to Pontius Pilate and he requested to pay for Jesus's burial. In Matthew, he's described as like a rich man, just kind of in passing. But in the book of Mark, he is described as a like respected member of the council. And apparently he was someone who, believed in Jesus and wanted to pay for the burial of Jesus, because otherwise Jesus was not going to be buried. He would have been treated like every other criminal who was crucified, and he would have been left up on the cross. It was like this humiliating display that, the Romans like to engage in to really ward off people from committing crime. So they say, okay, we'll put them up on the cross and leave them there. Let the animals peck their eyes out. Animals will eat them up and they'll be on display. And then it'll really kind of show people this is what happens to you. So that would have been the most likely thing that would have happened to Jesus. And there was no reason for Jesus to even have had a burial in the first place. And I don't really buy the story that Jesus had a burial. I think that was added after the fact, because in order to convince people that Jesus rose, you have to convince people there was an empty tomb, because without the empty tomb, how are you going to convince people of that? You just going to say, oh, he jumped off the cross and appeared? No, like they have to make up a burial and they have to put Jesus in the tomb so they can say there was an empty tomb. It's just a way of kind of progressing the story, and it's not rooted in what the reality of how things were back then. There's no reason Jesus would have been given a burial. There's no reason that Pontius Pilate would have been willing to allow Jesus to be given a proper burial. So I do think that part was embellished. I think that part was made up. There's really no way of knowing. Christians claim that every claim of the Gospels is true. I am not of that camp. We can pick through the Gospels to find truth claims, but not everything that was claimed in the Gospels was true. And I think that's how a lot of historians tend to look at these texts, is they kind of sort through to see what could be historically accurate and what's just speculation or what could have been made up. And I think it's highly possible and likely that the burial was made up. There was not an empty tomb. And if that's the case, then Turek's argument completely falls short here.
In other words, ladies and gentlemen, the New Testament writers did not create the resurrection. The resurrection created the New Testament writers. There would be no New Testament if it wasn't for the resurrection.
No, there would be no New Testament if it wasn't for the claims of the resurrection. You can still get the New Testament without there actually being a resurrection. You just have to have people claiming that it happened years and years and years after it supposedly happened.
Now, even if the New Testament never existed, Christianity would still be true. Why? Because Christianity is based on an event, the resurrection. You realize there were thousands of Christians before a line in the New Testament was ever written?
It just means a lot of people believed it. That's really all it means.
Why? Because an event occurred, the resurrection. You have to have more faith to believe it didn't occur than it did. And if God exists, and he does, and can create the universe out of nothing, then he can certainly resurrect Jesus from the dead. That's why we believe in Christianity.
Notice how at the end of it, he says, that's why we believe, not that's why it's true. The video is titled 4 Reasons Why Christianity is True. But he ends the video by saying, this is why we believe it. Those are 2 very different claims, don't you think? Christianity is true. I believe Christianity is true. One is a claim to objective truth, and the other is a subjective opinion about what is true. And so Frank takes us through this entire video as if he's going to prove something, but he ends it by saying, well, this is why I believe it. This is convincing enough for me. But he presents it in a way that you're supposed to believe it too. It's supposed to be true for you too. And nothing follows here. The problem with Frank Turek's approach here is that he presents things in a way that are assumed to be true without actually providing why they're true. And he makes very abstract claims about possibilities and presents them as though they aren't possibilities, but they are probabilities. What he's saying is the truth, when really he's just exploring the possibilities of truth. But he's decided that because whatever he believes could possibly be true, it is true. He says there's 4 reasons why this is true, but he doesn't give 4 reasons. He doesn't give any kind of hard evidence. Why? Because his belief is not based on evidence. It's based on faith and faith alone. And so many Christians fall for these apologetics because they are presented in such ways, in such confident ways. He's got a lot of confidence when he says these things. And when you're programmed from birth to believe a certain thing and to believe that thing to be true, it can be really difficult to think outside of that box. It says, oh, well, obviously truth exists, God exists, miracles exist. And I just proved to you that those things exist. And so therefore, what I'm saying must be true. That all leads to Christianity. And it's one big non sequitur. It doesn't follow. You have to jump and make so many conclusions and so many assumptions and have so much faith to jump to the conclusion that he's made here. And even at the end, he admits he's not concluding that this is why it's true. He's concluding this is why we believe it's true, because it's sufficient for us to believe as Christians. But it's not sufficient for me. And that's the point. We all examine things to see if they fit, if they work, if they're true. We all have our own methodologies, some better than others. And we're all kind of subjectively approaching these things to determine if it's convincing for us. And this is not convincing for me at all. If this is supposed to convince me, he's done a very poor job, which I'm not surprised by. But that's because he doesn't actually have anything of substance to offer. And so he has to kind of build up these apologetic arguments, throw them out at a rapid pace, and hope they just stick to the minds of people that aren't thinking critically. They're not scrutinizing it. They're not stopping, pausing, and asking the questions. They're just, he's just kind of blurting it out. This is true. This is true. This is true. Let's just keep going. Let's just move right through this. He doesn't give you time to pause and think about the claims that he's making. I'm sure you could pause the video, but it's not designed in that way to really make you think. It's designed to reinforce programming. That's all this is. This is apologetics to reinforce programming. And it doesn't actually come to any conclusion rooted in reality. It ends with, this is why I believe it, because it's convincing for me. Because I live in a world of cognitive dissonance where I accept things based on faith within this one area of my life. And then all the other things I require more evidence than is necessary, when it comes to the origins of the universe, the Big Bang, evolution, things like that. We have mounds of evidence and proof for those things. But he requires so much more for those things. But then when it comes to his thing, his Christianity, his religion, he doesn't really require anything at all. He just thinks of all the possibilities, decides that if it's possible, it must be true, and therefore God. The end. So I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. If you felt that this was compelling or convincing, maybe there's something that I missed that you want to kind of toss in, give me your thoughts. I'd love to hear what you think. I might do some more videos on Frank Turek because he's a very interesting character. And I am always getting people in the comments saying, go to Frank Turek, listen to Frank Turek. He'll tell you everything you need to know. He's one of the last ones I would trust to give me any information about truth or reality. Let's just put it that way. So thank you so much for watching. Please, if you like this video, leave a comment, like it. If you aren't subscribed, please do so and ring the bell. That helps you see my videos when I post them, and it helps my videos get out to more people who might need to see them. People, who want to hear the things they're thinking said out loud and find a space where they can deconstruct and feel free to think critically and apply scrutiny to what they believe. So thank you again for your support, and I'll see you next time.